So yesterday, Facebook's outage seems to have been caused by DNS, which is domain name system. However, that's just a symptom of the problem. The fundamental issue that Facebook has withdrawn, so-called, it's a border gateway protocol. The issue with BGP, in fact, from a security perspective, oftentimes it can be considered an attack vector, where we call it BGP route poisoning. One can introduce a misleading information into a singular router that matters, and that would propagate this misleading route to multiple routers. There were always these jokes about that, somebody could drive off the cliff and, all the rest will follow. And this is the kind of same thing that could happen with BGP. That said, Facebook has sort of devised its own sort of system because they have a much larger scale to cover, and it allows them to do fast and incremental updates. While the issue certainly stems from this routine BGP update, this coinciding with the fact that there were multiple very interesting and very damning reports from the whistleblower Francis that came out yesterday, and then multiple lawsuits were being discussed today in the media. It seems very coincidental, not to be a conspirational theorist, but it is something to think about, and I certainly wouldn't put it past them. Now, the obvious question, which still remains unresolved, is why those BGP routes disappeared in the first place. And it's not a common ailment, especially at the scale of this duration. It can happen. It's the timing of it that is, making people rethink, was it just a misconfiguration, or is it a tactical response to kind of bury some of the news? This is something we would not know, because the only update we have received is them telling, hey, we are working on this issue and we are aware of the fact. But until we see a full transparent report, and even after that, why are these whistleblowers coming out, is because there is an issue with Facebook trying to hide the truth. So it's one thing to be dependent on digital, but then it's whole another thing to be dependent on big, massive, for-profit corporations that literally profit from the data that they derive from your clicks. They track you outside of the app itself. In fact, the latest is that Facebook tracks people across over 8 million websites. And so they are constantly harvesting and collecting data. And this is why, over at XRSI, we advocate for decentralized solutions. And the risk that, these centralized, like Facebook, like Google, Apple, these centralized, systems, is that they will control, if I may be a bit bold, this dependence that we have on this Facebook and all these long-run long-run big tech corporation. It's an existential challenge for democracies and governments around the world, because they control lots and lots of people's data, and that way they control a lot of human behavior. Fairly recently, Mark Zuckerberg came out and claimed that they want to be a metaverse company. Now, all that is great, but again, same thing applies, that centralized versus decentralized. If we let them own a big chunk of that metaverse, or allow them to dictate the rules like they want to, self-regulate, or name the rules, again, we would run into the same issue. What we really would want to have is decentralized models, and not something owned by a massive corporation that writes its own rules, writes its own terms and services. So we need reasonable regulation that helps people feel safer, supports human rights, and most importantly, which concerns me the most.